Hello, my dog lovers. I think that we are live again. Hello, hello. We are here. Alicia, hi. And,
Hello and happy Thursday. Happy Facebook Thursday.
and also Christina is here. I'm really happy to see Christina. Christina is in the background and she's going to be sharing links. And I'm here and Pax is very happy chewing his bone. We got wild venison bone from the locals here, and I'm so happy to. It's like a little trophy. It's more valuable than gold for sure, especially because it's wild and it is pesticide and chemicals and antibiotics free. So I'm really happy about that. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about injuries. And usually what happens when I start planning a topic for a broadcast, people start cropping up with different problems of that kind. Yesterday, I ran into a naturopath here on a dog walk, and his dog actually was having some challenges. And when I asked him how old he was, he said he was just 5. And I could see him barely moving. And we have a little phone call scheduled to this afternoon to see how we can make that better. And I love doing these free consults because they make me feel like I don't need to worry about money. I don't need to worry about telling people how much the fees are. And at the same time, I can still make a difference. And this morning, I talked to another dog lover who had a little Aussie Shepherd. And she says, she was limping a little bit today. She's good, and I wasn't sure whether I should let her exercise or not. And that's something that I will be actually writing about in the next week's newsletter. So if you are not subscribed to newsletters, you can go to peterdobias.com and you will receive the newsletters. Every week I have a little rant on something. It's usually dog healthcare, but it's not just about dogs. It's about life and how to listen to our dogs in creating healthier and happier and longer life for them and also for us. So, Alicia, I love you always nodding when you greet something, and I know that when you're not nodding, that maybe I'm off track a little bit.
For the most part, we agree, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I love diversity. So, where do we start? We start what we love to do with our dogs. We love to see them happy, and we love to see them content and well exercised. But with that particular problem, there's one issue that sometimes we do things with our dogs that are not that healthy for them. Many dogs they usually do one-sided activity, whether it's ball retrieving or running behind a bike or something crazy. And one-sided activity usually leads to problems. And I said that things usually happen when I start preparing a lecture. My nephew called me just a couple of days ago and said, he's 30 plus, 32, 33. He's pretty much almost half of my age. He said that he had to go and have his MRI on his hip joints because he's an avid cyclist and he would cycle 150 miles in a day sometimes. And I've been telling him for at least a decade, hey, you have to strengthen your core and your upper body and stretching yoga and so on. And he didn't do that. And he has some sort of bone spur in his hip. And I'm sure that he'll forgive me that I'm saying that out loud publicly, because we had a conversation. Sometimes it's just a matter of time and things catch up with us and with our dogs as well. The person that I talked to yesterday said that, my dog used to love biking and running behind the bike, and now he's 5 and I'm concerned because he's not really running. And dogs and us have not been really designed for these kind of one-sided activities. And this is super important to remember, that if you love your dog, no matter how he loves running behind the bike or chasing the ball or running at the beach like crazy every day, you have to vary the exercise. Because if you don't, it's just a matter of time. Certain muscle groups get too strong and tight, others get weak, and the imbalance will lead to injuries. So there is no incident, it is no accident that dogs get injured when they do these one-sided exercises. I also do not think that most injuries, with the exception of, let's say, falling off some sort of ledge or slipping and sliding in a very sudden way, most injuries are actually a result of these imbalances. And they start cropping up when dogs are middle age. And in people when they're 30 or 40, you start seeing people coming down with knee issues and hip issues and shoulder issues and all that stuff. We have to really embrace balance exercise. Otherwise, it's going to lead to problems. Pax recently suffered from what I call the Elon Musk syndrome. Elon Musk, as most of you know, is a person who has changed the world. I'm really happy that he's changing the world. He's obviously a car maker and he builds rockets and he is into sustainable transport and solar energy. And it almost seemed that he would not win over the companies and corporations that try to maintain the status quo, whether it's the car manufacturers and having their fingers and hands in oil and not wanting to really change because electric cars don't break. He has shown us that the world in its deeper sense is actually fair, and that even some of the big and mighty powers actually may not be as powerful as conviction and as trust in what is good and integrity and believing in good. But going back to the Elon Musk syndrome, I love taking Pax for adventures, and just about 2-3 weeks ago, I took him to a very remote part of the island here, Maui. And we took him to his favorite beach, which is called Red Sand Beach. And Red Sand Beach is really fun because it's relatively enclosed. It's small. And it's this beautiful water, cliffs are behind, and Pax just loves to run back and forth and chase the waves because the waves are crashing in a certain way. And I don't do this every day, but this was a special day. We went for a trip, and I took him to Red Sand Beach. He had so much fun. It was so much fun, and you can see here, he's just like going 100 miles an hour, and he was fine, but then maybe about half an hour, 45 minutes later, I could see him resting a little more, and I thought, oh, that's kind of unusual, but it's good that he knows when to stop. And we went on and traveled, did a little round trip around half of the island, and then the next day I could see him kind of being a little grumpy with another dog, which was very unusual, and he didn't want to play with the other dog that was encouraging him. And a day after, I could see him licking his feet. I was already concerned that something was a little off. And then I took him to the beach day 3 because we usually take 1 to 2 days break between the beach runs. And he basically did one little loop and lie down. And it was on my birthday, and I thought this is going to be a great day, and people were calling me to wish me happy birthday. And instead, I was just brokenhearted. I saw my little young pup not wanting to walk. And as a vet, I know what all can go wrong. So I go usually with my own dogs, as you guys probably do, in the worst possible case scenario. Oh my God, he hurt his tendon, or he's got hip dysplasia, or something is going on. And I was not happy. I was panicked. I was really not happy. As soon as something happens with my own dog, what happens? I become a dog lover. I stop being a vet, and I know too much. So that actually doesn't make it better. That makes it worse. So I started examining Pax, and this is something that I'm going to teach you today, how to examine your dog when there's lameness. I started examining, couldn't find anything, thinking like his back is good and his legs are good, and why is he limping? Why doesn't he want to walk? At the end, I looked at his feet, because he was licking his feet. Duh. I should look at them sooner. And there was nothing obvious, no cuts or anything, but between the line between the foot pad and the skin, inside of the foot, kind of like in between the fingers, there was a little separation of the skin of the foot pad. And the reason why I call it Elon Musk syndrome is that he basically burned his tires on the sand. He was taking off so fast that he basically sloughed off or injured the foot pads, and the margins are the weakest area, the connection between the skin and the foot pad. And that's what the cause was. So I was immediately hugely relieved and knew that it's going to take only a few days and he would be back to normal. And that's what happened. But sometimes it's not as easy. And determining what's going on is super, super important. Here he was actually resting. I actually didn't have a picture of a foot of the hind foot. So it was right in between the toes here. So what do we do about injuries, and how do we categorize them, and how do we kind of navigate? Because you may not always want to spend hundreds of dollars at the veterinary clinic, and sometimes it's not necessary to do that. So what do you do when your dog refuses to walk, or if he limps? Well, the most important part is to find out if your dog has a chronic or acute injury. Because we all know and have seen the older dogs not wanting to move and limping on an ongoing basis. So it's super important for you to determine whether the onset was sudden or whether the problem is chronic. Now, the exam has to be done. And if you have a dog, sorry, I'm going back and forth on these slides. If you have a dog that has a chronic lameness, and chronic meaning it's been there for longer than a few days, maybe a week, rest hasn't helped, and whatever first aid you've applied, and I'll teach you, hasn't helped, that is a chronic injury. Already a few weeks is a chronic injury, and obviously a few months is definitely chronic injury. And what you want to do in those cases is to go and see your veterinarian, see someone who understands how to proceed with diagnostics and x-rays and maybe CT scans or MRI. Sometimes it's just hands. I do really appreciate all the different machines that we have. But in most cases, if you have experience and sensitive hands, you can determine where the injuries are. Now, to say that, you also have to determine how severe the problems are, and that's where x-rays and the different diagnostics come in place. So, the exam is something that if the injury is acute, and even if it's chronic, you can actually determine where things are, where the inflammation is, or the heat, or the injury is. You may be able to do that. But as I said, with chronic injuries, it's always good to see a vet and see what's going on a little deeper. But if your dog just started limping and you've never seen that kind of lameness again before, it is actually very safe for you to do an exam. So the first thing that you want to do is ask which leg is it? Is it left leg, hind leg, front leg, right leg, or is it a leg? Because sometimes it may not be a leg or a foot. Many people think that if a dog is limping, that it always has to be the leg, but it is not the case every time. Is your dog chewing, licking, or scratching everywhere? So many dogs are misdiagnosed with allergies because they're scratching, or people think that their dogs have fleas. And quite often what they're doing, they're actually trying to massage the muscle group that is injured, or try to soothe their joint. Or when they're rolling excessively, especially middle-aged and older dogs, sometimes it's just fun, but when they're rolling, they're massaging their back. They're trying to kind of like relieve a little muscle spasm. Or if they're chewing in the groin, which actually happened to Pax after he cleared about 6 foot wall several times on the walk when we were walking through an area that had these little water channels. And before I know it, Pax is going up and down these channels, and he's jumping and clearing them. But the next day, he's licking his groin, and I go, okay, pull your groin, little buddy. So we have to be a little more careful today. So chewing and licking is not always, or scratching is not always sign of itching. And you guys remember that actually more often it's something to do with muscles or joints or the underlying connective tissue than actually the skin. And this is something that I don't really know why it happens, but this is something that is misperceived often in veterinary practice and clinics, right? So dogs that they lick their paws and they may have some sort of nerve injury in the neck and they have related sensation all the way to the feet. They start licking and they're diagnosed with allergies and they're put on special diet and then on some sort of drugs and anti-inflammatories. And because anti-inflammatories relieve the itch or the sensation, but also the tight muscles, it gets better. And it's assumed that a dog has allergies, which is not true. I go on and on about this, but I won't stop until everyone knows this. So the foot, what do you examine on the foot? Well, oh, we have a picture missing here. Oh, no, maybe you don't. I don't. Just a second. I'm going to share this. So the foot, start with checking for cuts, because if there's a cut, you should know about it. But people often, when there's a cut foot pad, people often just run to the vet and they want to get it sutured. If you see that there is no kind of flesh sticking out, I know it's gross, but that's something that we need to discuss here. If you see that there is pink flesh sticking out, and if it's gaping, then it may need to be sutured. But sometimes the foot pad is cut only a little bit, and if you bandage it and put some skin spray or healing solution, we used to call it healing solution until we were disallowed to use healing solution, so we call it skin spray now. It's alternative for antibiotics. It's a herbal formula that was inspired by my grandfather. And I use it for everything, skin and cuts and all that. So if you see a cut, you can just put a bandage on and soak the bandage and gauze with healing solution or skin spray. And I can see that Pax actually got out. I'm so sorry, you guys. I will have to get him out because he somehow got out. Oh my goodness, just a second.
While Dr. Dobias is on the hunt for Pax to bring him back inside, I encourage all dog lovers that perhaps are interested in this topic, but might have missed the last Facebook Live 2 weeks ago to please check it out. We did a really special interview with Dr. Edward Bassingwaite, I think that's the right pronunciation, in Australia. The topic was on hidden pain, and it was an amazing conversation between Dr. Dobias and Dr. Bassingwaite that I think everyone would be really interested in. So definitely check it out on our Facebook page if you haven't already.
Alicia, thank you so much for pitching in here. You guys, life happens, right? My dog gets out and he tries to get in through a wrong entry that is closed. So I have these little gates that I sometimes close for him because he would run the whole day, and sometimes he needs to rest. Anyway, going back. So there's also, Alicia, did you talk about the wound care and wound care video or not?
No, I haven't talked about that yet. I actually mentioned the Facebook Live that we did 2 weeks ago with Dr. Edward in Australia to do with hidden pain. To make sure that dog lovers check it out because it's quite closely tied to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, Dr. Edward is a really great guy. We have a lot in common when it comes to seeing, how we see injuries and how we see treatments and what we do. So it's really interesting. Look it up. Anyway, there's also a video on how to treat cuts and wounds. So I won't be getting into too much detail. Going back to the exam, this is a little blurry, this image. I have no idea why, you guys, but maybe you'll see it a little bit. So make sure that you check the nails, because sometimes dogs kick their toe, in quotes, and they can actually injure the nail bed or separate the nail. Sometimes it's better to just trim the nail and leave it or keep it bandaged. and sometimes it's better to take it off. So that's something that you may need to go and see a veterinarian too. But if you see that your dog is okay, just make sure that he or she does not lick the toe excessively, because it can actually get infected when they do that. So once again, go to the wound care, see how to deal with any wounds. Usually I rinse them with water, no peroxide, because peroxide burns the cells that are supposed to heal the wound. That's the other thing that people don't know. That peroxide is actually contraindicated, and so is alcohol, obviously. So going back, examine the foot, make sure that you check the nails in between the digits, make sure that there is no separation between the foot pad and the skin, and that there's no blistering or anything like that. Sometimes dogs don't like their feet touched in general. So if you have a young puppy or young dog that is still getting used to the handling, make sure that you actually handle their feet, because if you don't, it can become very difficult for you to know if your dog is just sensitive because he doesn't like having his feet touched, or whether there is some sort of discomfort. Oops, I'm opening a different software here by accident. Joints are another kind of area to examine when you're examining your dogs for lameness. The anatomy of joints is kind of tricky. Just recently, my friend called me from the UK. She adopted a 7-month-old dog, and he had cartilage issues. And the cartilage issues, I'm having some problems with sharing here, you guys. I have no idea why. Can you see it now, Alicia? Maybe. Okay. No?
No, not yet. For some reason, I can see just a small portion of the screen and mainly black.
That is a strange thing. I'm going to try to restart here the keynote. Let me just. Oh, I think I have it. I got it. Maybe not. You guys, I love when life happens in those broadcasts, because it never fails, and it's like real life. We just have to go with the flow and see. So let me just try to open it one more time, and if I don't, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna restart. Alicia, if you have anything to add while I'm just kind of trying to.
Sure. Yeah, sure thing. So a few moments ago, we talked about the last Facebook Live, and definitely encourage everyone to check that out if they haven't already done so. And there's a bit of a trifecta here for topics. So the next thing that's going to come up is this weekend. I've already had a sneak peek at the newsletter, and it is also along the same lines. So I won't completely give away the information in advance, but if you're not yet signed up to our newsletters, we'll make sure there's a link posted in comments so that you can definitely sign up and not miss out on any of the news. So important when it comes to how we can take care of our dogs and make the best decisions for them.
So for some reason, the screen sharing is failing still. Well, we'll just do without slide, maybe. I'm going to do one more try. Oh, I think that we are up.
Yes, it's working now. I can see it. Thank you.
You guys, this is actually one of the things that I've been really interested. What is the likelihood of success without failure? And it's pretty much very low. There's always failures when you're trying to do something. So this is one of the examples too. So never give up. I'm actually one of those people who never gives up when it comes to trying until it happens, until it goes. And that's the same with healing and treatment, right? Like we have to constantly be open to new methods and new approaches. So anyway, going back to the joints, joints are tricky. I was talking about my friend that adopted a 7-month-old dog, and this poor pooch had a problem with cartilage. The condition is called osteochondritis. And OCD is actually osteochondritis dissecans, actually. That's separation of cartilage in English terms. And the separation happens when the bone and the cartilage grow really, really fast in young dogs that are on kibble, because it's really calorie dense. And I compare it to, when radishes are grown in the garden, if you're a gardener, when they grow too fast or when they have too much water, they kind of crack. And the same thing happens with the joints when they grow too fast. They kind of crack and chip away the cartilage. And this is something that needs to be dealt with immediately. Luckily, my friend's dog has had a surgery. The little flap of cartilage was removed and he's recovering well. But going back to joints and examination, it's super important that you separate, I'm going to stop sharing here, that you separate each joint. So if you're testing let's say the wrist, you have to stop moving everything else and just kind of separate. So usually I hold with 2 hands, obviously now I can't, and move the joint and feel for heat or any swelling. And what's really important, to actually compare the joints. Make sure that you actually look at both of them to see whether there is any difference in the thickness or the heat or anything like that. I've been really interested in thermal photography because thermal photography gives you an idea on how inflamed that particular area is. If you think that I got distracted, I did, because someone came to the house and Pax is trying to get out. I may just let him out. Just a second. Alicia, go on. It's going to be Alicia and Peter today.
Okay, so we've covered Facebook Live to make sure everyone checks out the last one, and definitely to sign up for the newsletter for this coming weekend if you care about your dog and want to make sure that you can attend to any injuries. This is some great information for you to keep in your back pocket should the need ever arise. Our team member Christina is posting some great links in the comments as well, so please check out the articles about this very important topic.
Thank you, Alicia. I should probably name it Alicia Live for today. Anyway, you guys, I'm sure that you don't mind chatting with Alicia. She's actually the person who looks after the customer service, and she's the one who's created this amazing database of information that I wrote and recorded. And it's been really useful, because when someone calls or emails with a question, we can just send you links and send the whole set of info. And we do that for free for anyone who actually asks. We don't really mind if the people who don't buy our products or don't really believe in nutrition that we propose or recommend, they still can, you all can get the information for free. And that's something that makes us really happy. Anyway, going back to the joints. So separate the joints, make sure that you move them, compare them, check for inflammation, heat, and if you see anything like that, that's usually a sign that you should take your dog to a veterinary clinic for further assessment. There's one thing that I forgot to tell you. It's super important to make sure that your dog is not, when you start this exam, that your dog is not really sensitive. Sometimes dogs don't even put any weight on their foot or their leg. That's a sign that you have to take them to the veterinary clinic. There may be a fracture or something like that. So super important. So I did talk about muscle injuries. Most of them, or injuries, are often not accidents, that they're kind of like a gradual process where over exercise, tightness of muscles leads to weakness of certain other muscle groups, and then imbalance and injuries. So if a friend tells you, I've been doing so well, and suddenly I slipped and my knee ligament is torn, unfortunately, it is not usually that simple. It usually happens as a result of lack of stretching or lack of balance strengthening. And that the same thing happens with our dogs. A good example is cruciate ligament injuries, the knee ligaments in dogs. Often dogs that have cruciate ligament injuries have imbalances in the lumbar spine and too much tightness and too much contraction. And as a result, they tear their ligament. I really recommend stretching and recommend massage and recommend balance exercise. Once again, I'll be talking about balance exercise until I'm blue or green. Okay, so neck and spine is another super important area that I'd like you to pay attention to, because they have a lot to do with leg lameness. So if your dog is limping, it does not necessarily always need to be the leg. And this is something that I often see being missed in veterinary examinations and clinics, where people usually focus on the joints and the muscles and the feet and all that, and the spine is often neglected. I very frequently hear people saying, well, my dog is really, his back is not really good, but I had x-rays taken and everything is fine. The challenge is that x-rays do not really disclose subtle misalignments that lead to muscle spasm, nerve impingement, and as a result, lameness of the hind or the front leg. Collar injuries are very commonly the cause of front leg lameness and paw licking. Hind leg lameness often is a result of lumbar spine injury. So remember that those are, spine is super important, and that you may want to talk to a chiropractor or a physical therapist or acupuncturist, or someone who's got that refined knowledge in the spinal energy flow and work. I will take an opportunity to say that some veterinary colleges have been very unreasonable when it comes to chiropractors and physical therapists and other practitioners helping our dogs. The province of Quebec in Canada does not allow any non-veterinarians to touch animals despite their qualification, despite them being doctor of chiropractics or physical therapist, acupuncturist. Basically, this veterinary college in Quebec is organizing a witch hunt against anyone who wants to basically help dogs and is not a veterinarian. And we know that this is not about the dogs and their well-being. This is about trying to protect the business. And I think that this is wrong. And I will always speak against practices like that. Human medicine and human health allows, imagine that your MD would actually not allow, your medical association of the human doctors would not allow chiropractors or physical therapists to work with you. That would be absolutely crazy. And if someone tries to convince me that this is for the safety of our dogs, come on, like this is absolute baloney. And I think that we have to share this information with each other and make these organizations to actually let go. Because this is not any different than what I was talking about Elon Musk and the gas car companies. They try to slow down the progress because of their own interest and not because of interest of the consumer or the patient. So let's try to make a difference, share this information with each other, and maybe even write letters to the Quebec Veterinary College. You can look it up where they are. Anyway, so speaking of interests, I do not like NSAIDs. NSAIDs are the drugs that are most commonly used as pain control and painkillers. So when it comes to reducing inflammation in injuries, two things happen. If you have an acute injury and you reduce inflammation by using anti-inflammatory drugs, you will make your dog feel like everything is fine, and the damage may go on a little further. Second, NSAIDs block the healing pathways. Inflammation in the acute stage is actually part of the healing response because blood circulation increases, white blood cells get in that area, tissue will heal better. If you stop that, it's almost like taking a sleeping pill at the time your house catches on fire. That doesn't really work very well. So what do we do really for acute injuries, and how do we address first aid? Well, um, you first have to rule out the serious injury. Second, you have to help your dog rest. This is a picture that I took yesterday. I just loved how comfortable Pax was. He was actually just after beach run. He wasn't injured, but I kind of think that this is a good example how dogs should rest. Make sure that they have nice, soft, and cushy place. That they have the best chair in the house, because your husband or your partner or whoever, wife, doesn't deserve the best chair. It's your dog, right? And remember that icing is actually really good. Icing, especially if you determine that there is a pulled muscle, is superb. 3 to 6 times a day for 10, 20 minutes. Make sure that you don't do it for too long, because then you can actually cause, problems by applying the ice bag or frozen piece or whatever it is on that area. Frozen piece work really well, actually. Do it in the first 1 or 2 days, for sure. But if your dog does not like it, it may be a sign that it may be a different kind of injury. Chronic injuries should not be iced. You know that most dogs that have joint issues or arthritis, they do actually much better with heat and warmth, or some ginger or turmeric, which are also heating. Now, it may surprise you, but omega-3 oils are superb when it comes to reducing inflammation. Scientifically proven, they are as good as NSAIDs without a side effect. Again, which oils which form of oil you're using is super important, because there are issues with sustainability. I have gone through major search, or my team and I have gone through major search when we were sourcing omega oils. Discovered that fish oil is a big no-no because of mercury and also overfishing. Then krill is a sustainable oil, and it's low in heavy metals. However, not sustainable. Sorry, it's a good oil. It's not sustainable because it's overfished as well. It is low in mercury, which would be good, but it is food for all the fish and whales and other marine creatures. So it's super important for us to make sure that we don't deplete that particular source. So eventually we ended up with calamari or squid, and squid is really high in EPA and DHA, the most valuable omega-3s. But because there are fewer fish, squid they have a heyday. They have been increasing in population since the 1950s. So that's something that is good to know. It's also low in heavy metals, and that's why we fell in love with it. I take omega oil every day. Pax does too. And if I see that he, let's say, pulls his groin because he was clearing high banks, river banks, then I give him triple dose once or twice and go from there. So the next part of first aid is arnica. Arnica is a homeopathic remedy. And for those of you who do not know homeopathy, homeopathy is actually in the forefront of many discussions. Does it work? Does it not? And so on. I myself have done some research with homeopathy, also taught homeopathy in the past. And I've seen homeopathy curing conditions such as hyperthyroidism, for example, which is a condition that can be diagnosed by lab test, and also the results of the treatment can be diagnosed by the lab test again. I've had about 50% cats, hyperthyroid cats, recovering and being well without any medication or radioactive treatment that is normally used. So that was actually my own discovery, but also confirmation that homeopathy does work, and that once again, some of the circles that do not like homeopathy because it's cheap and it's easily available may not like it. I use arnica all the time. That's my first line of defense. Usually I like 1 potency, which is the high potency. But when you go to store or pharmacy, you will probably get only 30C or 200C. You can take a screenshot of this for dosing. And I would use arnica for 3 days, 1 to 3 days, depending how your dog is doing. If everything is fine the next day, then you may want to stop. And if he or she is not, then you may want to go for a little longer. Um, Turmeric is another very effective anti-inflammatory without the side effects. It is scientifically proven that it is actually beneficial for dogs with injuries and for people with injuries. I myself, if I overdo it with exercise, I make myself a little turmeric latte. It's really simple, you guys. I'll give you the recipe. You use some sort of ideally non-dairy milk. I use a device which is called almond cow, and I can make almond milk or oatmeal milk or any kind of nut milk in that little, it's like a kettle with a little blender inside. It's quite inexpensive. So I use that milk, and then I either cut up, about an inch of turmeric or shred it up or blend it in that milk, and then heat it up and put half a teaspoon of cinnamon for a cup and a little bit of honey and a little bit of pepper, because we know that turmeric gets more potent when it's used with pepper. Some people may ask me, how about golden paste? I'm not a big proponent of fatty coconut oil for dogs, even though I know that it has been very popular. I just like to give the active ingredients. Coconut does not help mobility as much as turmeric. Okay, so if you want to give your dog an anti-inflammatory turmeric dose, you can just mix it in the food, or you can and dogs are usually fine with that. Or what would we mix it in? Just something yummy. It doesn't need to be. It can be in powder. It can be grated as well. Turmeric is actually good for not only acute injuries as an anti-inflammatory, but also for chronic ones. It is a heating food or heating herb, superfood, and we know that dogs with arthritis and mobility issues later on usually benefit from having heating ingredients. Ginger has been actually proven to have moderate effect on pain. And there is also perna mussel, which is used as a joint supplement. And it has a very positive effect on inflammation. I've seen better effect than glucosamine and MSM. Perna mussel is my favorite for that. It's whole food, it's sustainable, and it does have a positive effect. Now, some people will ask, so can I give CBD for injuries? And CBD, I was so excited about CBD when it started to be used and it became legal in some countries. And then I started using it myself, and I used it on a few dogs, and I've never seen really the same results I haven't seen the results that I would expect. So the jury is still out. I'm not really necessarily against CBD oil. I think that there is a lot of issues with quality of the ingredients and also potency. And I have a feeling that some of these oils are spiked and sold for much more than they should be sold for. So that's all the big issue. If you have had positive experience with CBD oil, great, but I have not seen the same results. I'm going to go back to anti-inflammatories one more time. And I know that, or I gather, or I suspect that some of you are using them for yourself or your dogs, and they're big business. If you look up online how much of these drugs is sold, it's into billions, and they will not let go. Unfortunately, the question that I would like to ask is this: what would you sacrifice? Would it be your dog's kidneys or your dog's joints? What would you take? Is it more important? Is it the joints or is it the kidneys? In my mind, a dog that cannot move is not a happy dog. A dog that does not have healthy kidneys is not a healthy and happy dog either. And I have seen repeatedly dogs on NSAIDs suffering from onset of kidney disease right after the medication has been used. I personally have seen some dogs vomiting pools of blood after giving an injection of anti-inflammatory medication. And I think there are better other ways to actually use to or apply to improve mobility and heal tissues. I had a little bit of a knee issue just about 3 months ago. It actually was lingering. It was kind of chronic. And I was stretching and doing yoga, and it wasn't helping. And then I went to Pilates, and I strengthened the back of my thighs, and suddenly my knee pain went away. Right? No anti-inflammatory medication, nothing else than a little more exercise. So that is why we should work with physical therapists, massage therapists, people who understand how to strengthen the tissue that is injured or the muscles around so the tissue can get a chance to heal. Drugs are like sleeping pills in a case your house catches on fire. When it comes to anti-inflammatories, the inflammation is the sign that there's something wrong. If you run to your neighbor and you say, hey, my house caught on fire, can you help me? And he says, why don't you just take a sleeping pill? It's going to be all fine. This is what anti-inflammatory medication is like. Find the right allies. And you can see that I emphasize here a veterinarian with a good understanding of mobility, arthritis, and exercise, because most veterinarians have not been trained in chiropractics, physical therapy, acupuncture, and other massage therapy and hydrotherapy. There are some, and it's getting more popular. But if your vet says, I've taken your dog's x-ray and there's no sign of any arthritis, your dog is fine, don't believe it, because muscle issues and fascia issues do not subtle misalignments do not show on x-rays. It has to be very prominent. This is actually a photo that I've taken many years back. This guy, our first dog, when he was old, he was about 15 here. I basically took him to these lovely ladies who did underwater treadmill for him and then massage. And he was in heaven. And this is one of the really hard parts of seeing our dogs age. Eventually, no matter what we do, life is a terminal disease. And we can extend life. And this is what we are trying. That's what we've been trying with my team for many years now. But eventually we know that we can extend, but not really stop the process. So when your dog gets older, I know it's hard, but you have many, many different ways to make them feel better and also make yourself feel better. Now, there are some other tools. I really like different core strengthening equipment. FitPaws is a company in the US that has all sorts of different balancing equipment for dogs and agility dogs. If your dog gets older, you may want to teach it how to lift their legs more or how to balance on these donuts, and maybe teach them before they get old. So then when they get old, you can actually we can still continue doing that. And also by strengthening their core when they're younger, they will age slower, as we all wish we do. Vary your dog's activity. This is my little super dog. He's I remember one thing. When he was a puppy, I was looking at him and thinking, I hope he's going to be okay, because he's kind of waddly and he wasn't really strong. And now when I see him rocketing on the beach, it really frightens me. It really frightens me. And, he is a water dog. He loves to go. This is actually an area here in Maui, and there's these irrigation ditches that are really old, like 100 years old, and water flows, and there are different walls and canals, and he jumps up and down all the time. And the reason why I put regret here is because that's going to be a topic of my next week's newsletter. After one of these walks that I took with Pax, he cleared a few of these walls. And the next day I saw him licking his groin. I mentioned that already. And I remember sitting here and thinking, I was planning to go for a really nice 3-hour hike in the mountains here. And maybe it should be fine. It'll be fine. It's going to be fine. And then I catch myself, I think, you're silly. like, why do you actually push your luck? Like, why don't you just go for a little mellow walk, and you go for the walk next day? And we did, and it was fine. But it is so often tempting to push our dogs further just because we don't want to see something, we don't want to see the injury, or we go, oh, it's going to be fine. I have no idea why the temptation to do something that we know deep inside we shouldn't do is so strong. So this is going to be the newsletter for next week. I will disclose more. Remember that veterinary colleges do not teach how to detect spinal injuries and injuries. So have a discussion with your vet when your dog gets injured, but don't always. This may sound funny. Don't always trust trust your intuition. Talk to other people. Um, Also, try to make change and create change by connecting with these organizations that are forbidding other professionals to work on dogs because it's nonsense. Now we have at least 10 minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, Alicia will read them and I will try to answer them.
Great, thank you. We have had quite a few comments and questions from the community so far. So thank you to everyone. A lot of people had mentioned that turmeric had been great for their dogs, same with Feel Good Omega, and also how well their dogs are doing after having chiropractic treatments. So it's lovely to hear. The first question comes from Bailey. Bailey asks, what is a normal amount of paw licking? Which was at the start of the presentation when we spoke about paw licking. Too much could indicate injury, but if they're just licking their paws a little, how does one determine, what's fair versus maybe what's indicative of the injury?
That's a really cool question. I really like that. Alicia, if you can make a note, we are going to write a little broader post. I'll try to answer it off the cuff. Any amount of paw licking that is regular should concern you, meaning that there can be different reasons. The first thing that I would do is if your dog licks his or her paw, make sure that you don't use a collar to attach the leash to, and that you use a harness. It took me many, many years to test different harnesses. Actually, this morning I had a conversation with a dog lover about harnesses, and she was using one that I found is actually pinching the armpit here. And I use one that is called Perfect Fit, and that is actually much more open in that chest and armpit area. So it's super important when you're choosing a harness to use the ones that work. I use only, in tears, I have not attached Pax's leash to a collar, except once, and that was by an accident where I kind of clipped it in the wrong thing. And then then I realized what I did, and I was quite upset with myself, how uncaring I was. But going back, it's not, if your dog is using collar, it's not that you're uncaring. You may be unaware how dangerous it is, even for dogs that don't pull. They may want to see another dog, and they injure the nerves, the cervical nerves, and it will lead to paw licking. I will show you this little chart one more time because it's a really nice picture to show you how the nerves actually from that lower portion of the neck go all the way to the paws, right here. And this is where the collar ends up usually when dogs are pulling. So this is to remember. So going back to paw licking, collar injuries are very common. If you live in a colder climate, salt and some sort of chemical treatments on lawns. Don't use any chemicals, pesticides, insecticides. Just recently, we had a conversation with another friend, thinking how crazy it is that people still use all these lawn chemicals without really realizing that it's affecting their health and their dogs, because dogs are even lower to the ground, and they usually walk barefoot, right? Unless they're the sport city dogs or in cold climates where it's justified. Another reason for paw licking would be long nails, arthritis as well, maybe a reason for paw licking. When inflammation in the feet could lead to discomfort and licking. So long nails, arthritis, which is inflammation of the joints in translation, and neck injuries are the most common. Allergies, not so much. However, paw licking is often seen as a sign of allergic conditions, and I do not think that that's as common as some people may believe.
Excellent. Thanks so much. We'll
Mhm.
try to get I think 3 more questions in if we can.
Sure.
The next question is a quickie. It's from Veronica. Veronica says, "Hi, Dr. D. Some of your products already have turmeric. Do we give them their full dose of the Fab 4 and also the eighth to a quarter of a teaspoon per 10 pounds of body weight if we're giving them straight turmeric?"
Yeah, that is actually correct. What I've done with some of these products, I try to act preventively. So when I looked at, let's say, Soul Food, the certified organic fermented multivitamin for dogs, I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I actually address some of the most common conditions, such as inflammation, cancer prevention, liver disease, and kidney weaknesses. Those are really common in dogs. So we added among the other ingredients, and you can actually look online at soulfoodvitamins.com. We added turmeric, but it is in it's more of a preventive dose where, I kind of focus more on trying to give a little bit of this amazing superfood to hopefully prevent cancer and reduce inflammatory processes. Or actually, it's not about reducing. Turmeric doesn't reduce inflammation as much as it allows healthy inflammatory response. It does decrease the discomfort and pain and makes the process go much faster, but it doesn't suppress it the same way that NSAIDs, strong NSAIDs do. So I would to answer your question, I would give the same dose for dogs that are on Soul Food if there is an injury, right? So this is like if I have an injury, I up the omega oil doses from the regular maintenance. I go 3 times. When it comes to injury and turmeric, again, Soul Food has a little bit, but if you have an injury, you add that 1/4 to 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon per 10 pounds of body weight.
Excellent, thanks. And speaking of NSAIDs, some people do ask that if a dog is on them for acute injuries and they want to switch over to more of a natural pain sort of control method, should they stop the NSAIDs cold turkey? Should they transition slowly? Is it just a matter of case by case connecting with their vet? What's your take on that?
On some level, it's case by case, right? I've had some people saying, well, but if my dog is really sore and in a kind of end stage of life, I want them to be comfortable. I really struggle with that opinion, even though I also, if you see that your dog is on, you kind of feel that the inevitable is coming, then it may be a reasonable solution. But I still feel that there are other ways of making them comfortable. And when it comes to switching, I've never been asked that question, but I would try to halve the dose of the NSAIDs, and I would try to introduce them to the new methods, and then probably within 3 to 5 days, I would stop completely. It's not like prednisone that you have to be careful about when you're stopping it or, discontinuing it. Prednisone and other corticosteroids have to be given or discontinued slowly, because what they do, they suppress the adrenal glands. And when they do suppress adrenal glands, if you withdraw them, the adrenal glands are actually not, they're kind of asleep when you give the prednisone, and you have to allow them to kick back with the natural cortisol production. So, it can cause some problems if you do it suddenly, especially in a dog that has been on the medication for a long time. But with NSAIDs, it has a different mode of effect, and it should not cause any problems. Relatively quick discontinuation, yeah. And especially for acute injuries, I would just basically stop. Like if there is just one-time injury and your dog has been given these painkillers, just stop them and start what I just suggested and what I do. And it's really fascinating. It's amazing how quickly the results arrive. When Pax he went through surgery, he was neutered. He had a retained testicle, and we had to neuter him in November. he had quite a bit of trauma in one of the groins that was explored, and the regular pain control, I didn't use NSAIDs, but I used some other pain control, opioids and so on, and they didn't really work. And as soon as I just basically said, forget it, right? And I went to the omegas and turmeric and cold packs, like it was like within 12, 24 hours, he was so much happier. Um, so yeah, they're potent. These natural substances are potent. They are not licensable, and you know who minds that part. And they're relatively inexpensive, and you know that that is not good for the business of big pharma, right? So you know, I get frustrated that medicine has evolved in the way that we know it now, because if it was really unbiased on the level of what works and what doesn't, we would end up with many more natural approaches and remedies. But doctors and veterinarians nowadays are even afraid to use these natural remedies, because they are afraid that if they don't follow the natural protocols, sorry, not natural, the established conventional protocols, then they would be ostracized. And I've seen that in with my colleagues, right? When they're held accountable, you have to use the conventional method, otherwise you're doing wrong, and that is actually not really okay. I'm so glad that I'm actually free now, that I'm licensed in the European Union at this point. I held a license in British Columbia for about, let's see, from 94 until about 2018. So for about 24 years, right? And I'm glad that I don't anymore, because I can speak freely. And I had someone actually complaining. A couple of colleagues of mine complained that I wrote an article on something, and I said, just tell them to complain to the college. It was really lovely for me to know that I am much more free. So I'm here for you guys. I'm here for you, and I appreciate anyone who is part of our community. I also appreciate those of you who trust our products. That's how we can do what we do. But because they're liked and highly rated, I know that you are okay. I much prefer doing that than creating livelihood or making living from disease and needing disease and sick animals to create health. So this way we hope, at least we hope, and we kind of know that we make living from creating health, and that feels much better.
We definitely, yeah, it feels amazing. One of our longtime community members actually has a question that's a little bit more involved. It's from Stephanie, so hopefully I do it justice. Stephanie mentions that one of her German Shepherds has had acute inflammation in her lumbar spine several times in her life. She's had chiro adjustments as well as acupuncture, but during these acute attacks, which she still doesn't really have an answer for, she's been in severe pain and has needed pain medication for a few days when it happens. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest for this sort of acute inflammation of the lumbar spine? Is there anything else than what she's mentioned?
It kind of brings me back to strengthening the core, actually, to prevent these episodes, because I've had a couple of times in my life, back suddenly it seizes up. And I know that it's usually because I have not exercised my core. And so in dogs, that's the same thing. That's one thing. Lumbar area is also related to digestion. So if you're feeding food that is not really suitable or fitting your dog, whether it's processed kibble or something that just doesn't fit, then it may actually flare up. It's almost like a feedback to the spine. The digestive tract is related to the lumbar spine. And if you feed something that just doesn't fit, then the spine will get tighter. Number 3, I have a homeopathic remedy, which is really great. And I used it in Sky, who had lumbar issues. Pax doesn't, but Sky did. It's called phosphoric acid. And I usually recommend 1 potency, 200 or 1 potency. If you have 1 potency, give, I'm just going to say in the acute flare-up, give arnica as the first line of defense, like 1 dose of 1 arnica, and then go to 1 phosphoric acid maybe an hour later, and give that 2 to 3 times a day for 2 or 3 days. And that should actually release the spasm. high doses of omegas, turmeric, you know, acupuncture sometimes may work as well if you see those spasms. Because if you use NSAIDs, you're basically telling the body to stop giving you the signals that there is something wrong. And it stops giving your dog the signals that there is something wrong. So she or he feels better, but in the long run, it leads to recurrent problems. Core strengthening, definitely. If you do some sort of exercise that is one-sided, try to be mindful. Frisbee, ball, excessive jumping up, something like that will lead to lumbar imbalances and injuries and core weakness. Fit pause, balancing equipment. Awesome. Wonderful.
Definitely. And quite a few community members that are watching right now have asked about laser treatments, of which I know there's a huge variety. There's sort of cold laser treatments. There's the pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, PEMF machines, beamers, lots of different lasers that are on the market and available. Is there anything that you want to share that, you know, from your experience or that you've heard from feedback from others of how these can be put to good use when it comes to injuries and recovery for dogs?
I'm not a physical therapist, therefore I don't have enough knowledge in that area. I know that some physical therapists use lasers and they do fine. I had Sky treated with laser therapy, and I think that it's probably a good adjunct treatment, whether it's cold or hot laser. I would say the gentler is probably better. But again, you would have to talk to physical therapists when it comes to the electromagnetic kind of pads like Beamer. I know that some people really like them. I'm just going to kind of take a neutral stance, mainly because when I actually used it on Sky, my first dog, he really did not like it. And I kind of think that on some level, we need to trust our dogs. But it's not to say that it's not going to be good for some other dogs. I would say that it's probably not a good idea to use in dogs that have, let's say, some sort of tumor or cancer condition, because it does increase blood flow to a particular area of the body, and it may possibly exacerbate and worsen the condition. But again, I am taking a neutral stance here because number one, I don't want to. I try not to talk about other products. And second, I know that the best way to go is to talk to people who have a good experience, with them and who use them. So that's all.
That's great. We are over time. I know that we've gone about 10 minutes past our anticipated finish time of 2 p.m. Pacific. Is there anything that you'd like to, I don't know, let the community know to round off today's Facebook Live?
Well, if you go to peterdobias.com, my website, there's tons of articles. You can just use the search bar, and people often call me or email us about a problem. We just say, go to the website. There's a whole bunch of information, and they find it very helpful, but they don't know where to find it, right, or how to find it. So use the website as if it was your little veterinary handbook and first aid handbook. Tons of information there. We've been recording videos, which I don't enjoy as much, but I've been working on some podcasts as well, which are going to be coming. Subscribe to our newsletter, because that's always, there's always bits and pieces of information. If you are interested in trying your products, we'd be very grateful. And thank you for those of you who rated them so highly, because that really is the best reward to see that you guys find them useful. And I also would like to thank you, Alicia, because you're the person who's been at the forefront of helping dog lovers and connecting when you guys are emailing us. So Alicia is super important within our company, and also Christina and other customer service team members and everyone who works on the mission.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's such a team effort. I've been with you for almost 7 years now. It's gone very quickly, and it's incredible to see how the community has grown and how the team has grown, and how many dog lovers we've been able to help throughout the years. So big thanks to our team and definitely the community for following and for learning and asking great questions so that you can take care of your dogs, keep them happy and healthy.
There's one more thing, in the world of social media. This morning, I was actually listening to a podcast on how many profiles and how many artificial and fake likes there are online, and profiles that have millions of likes, and they're fake. And that actually blocks the information that we produce and we work really hard on. So if you like anything, if you like articles or anything that we create or our products, to share them with others, because it's super important, especially in the time when the bandwidth is taking up with those fake accounts and fake likes and all that. So it's been a little more difficult for us to kind of get the information to you. We have, we have over 100,000 people on Facebook, for example, but only a few hundred or thousands will see what I post. So share, like, if you can, because that makes a difference in the lives of other dogs, and it also allows our mission to happen. So thank you. That's all. Have a wonderful evening or afternoon, whatever it is in your time zone, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks, probably with question and answer. We'll have four live humans who will be there for their dogs to ask questions, and we'll try to solve their challenges. So come back, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.